In times of crisis, it can be very easy to gravitate towards dystopian fiction to make sense of the horrors of the world unfolding around you, to provide you with knowledge or hope on how the monsters of the modern world can be counteracted. It's why you'll see George Orwell's 1984, for example, be cited so much for how it resonates with modern audiences as a timeless, prescient piece of art that gives us a glimpse into the creation of the modern world, but I personally struggle to hold modern dystopian art in the same reverence. How am I meant to take the scathing anti-Trump satire of The Boys seriously, or the feel-good hope of Project Hail Mary, when it's produced by a company owned by a man who stands proudly at Trump's inauguration, or said to be openly anti-political by the latter's author? Or something like The Devil Wears Prada 2, which mourns the slow death of journalism, the toxicity of tech bros, and the rise of AI, while Stanley Tucci is doing Devil Wears Prada-themed Google ads supporting AI. Or a series like Andor, dealing with genocidal fascists in the world of Star Wars without actually being able to say the words fascism or genocide while promoting the show. I'm meant to see these pieces as anti-authority and progressive when all they're doing is lining the pockets of those behind the show, and in turn, the same problems the real world has that the shows are meant to be against. When the world is getting darker and darker and everything we see spread across the news every single day, what about some film or TV show is meant to placate that? Shit's gotten so bad the art can't even pull up worst case scenarios anymore to fear. We're already fucking there. And this isn't even necessarily a shot at those behind the projects themselves. The current media landscape is so skewed and owned by a very small group of billionaires that if you're genuinely trying to get people to watch any kind of show or film that you want to make and get a message across, there's only so many avenues that you can go through to do that on a large scale level, because of how much the modern media landscape is owned by the very monsters these kinds of projects are fighting against, in a similar way to me having to use Instagram, for example, as a way to criticize the people who own it or talk about the problem platforms such as these help to create. In a world where hypocrisy is unavoidable, you have to work with the cards you're dealt. And while I would still for the most part argue that avoiding non-essential consumption from unethical sources is most important, these kinds of dystopian media, regardless of where it comes from, can and should be celebrated if made with sincerity, as it can incite real-world discussion and change, enlighten people, and direct their energy into the right places, which is what all of this should really be about. But the opposite can also be true, as a lack of action coming from problematic consumption calls into question the broader problem of the commodification of political ideas, or inaction against the evils of the world outside our window. And seeing these types of dystopian fiction as just fiction, or letting these kinds of shows or films perform our politics for us rather than using them as inspiration to take action ourselves, remains part of the very real problem behind the existence of this kind of modern dystopian fiction in the first place. It's a trap we all fall into, but also an uncomfortable truth we have to face, where if we are going to continue to consume the media we love through less than ideal means, the least we can do is actually act upon these things in real life, enlist in a narrative war, and work so these forms of media reflect merely a horrifying past, rather than an all too relevant present and future.